I think I've grown a lot by my parents kind of forcing me to do stuff that I was uncomfortable to do, like going and ordering my own something at a restaurant or making the phone call myself. It even helped with things like when we would go to Israel and I would go shopping by myself or with a sibling. Like I could do that because my parents had taught me how to do it. And I wasn't that afraid because I knew I could. And so giving your kids an opportunity to do that with you there is really the best time for them to learn that, I think. And that's something I definitely want to do in my family.
Hi, welcome to Jeremy Pryor's podcast, or what I like to call Jeremy Pryor Unfiltered. I'm his daughter and producer, Kelsey Gall, and we are excited to bring you seasons of content all the way from Tolkien to theology, from business to family. If you like to contemplate deep philosophical ideas across a wide range of topics, you've come to the right place. Make sure you give us a follow so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Hey everybody, welcome to my podcast. We are not in our normal locations, are we?
No, definitely not.
Where are we, Lisa?
We're in Japan. Which
we
city?
are in, Tokyo. So we're all a little bit jet lagged. We've been traveling all day. And April, you want to tell people where were we today?
Yes, we're actually on a tour. And so today our tour bus took us to Mount Fuji and Haikona Island or mountain range. And we got to ride a pirate boat across a lake at the foot of all these mountains. It was pretty amazing.
Yes.
And then came back. So it's like a 2-hour bus ride from here, Mount Fuji, from Tokyo.
Yeah. So we're here for about a week, and then we'll be in South Korea. Elisa, do you have a favorite snack that you've enjoyed? I know you've been really working your way through the menu.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had all of them yet, but we got these chocolate-covered macadamia nuts, which are really good, and these pear hard candies. So I think those are my favorites so far.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we are on the road for like a month. And so we were in Colorado Springs and then in Seattle, now in Japan, South Korea before we get back home. Everyone is missing everyone at home, especially little Elijah, who wants his Auntie Ellie and Saba and Safta. So we're excited to get back there soon. But we wanted to talk to you guys about what happened in Colorado. So I'm going to read a little article I wrote about my 10 top takeaways. So this was Integrated, our business dad mastermind. So I have my takeaways here, and I'm really curious for both you, April and Elisa, like what is anything that kind of stands out to you guys in this list, things that you think are like ways we might be able to implement some of these things. And so I'll read this and then love to get your take on this. So it says, twice a year, I go away to a beautiful spot with other asset building dads, and we are trained on how to integrate faith, family, and business. I like to create a top 10 takeaway list that I process with April when I get back, which we'll do on an upcoming podcast. And that's what we're doing here. Our main speaker was Scott Donnell, author of Value Creation Kid, The Healthy Struggles Your Children Need to Succeed. So most of these takeaways were inspired by things that Scott shared. All right. So number 1, mission, vision, and values must be encoded into stories. These words, phrases, and statements are really to focus the family's chief storyteller on building a library of canonical family stories that symbolize what it's like to live out our vision, mission, and values and tell those stories often. So that was my takeaway. Jesus told stories. He didn't just give us a list of values. I'm realizing there's a kind of laziness to how I'm leading my family and these core values by not working on this library. So I'm going to make a major effort this year to work with April to catalog the core stories of our family and to watch our kids when they live out these values and capture and retell those stories. So I'm excited to think about that, think about each of our values and how stories might relate to those. So that's number 1. Number 2, leave to versus leave in. This is heritage over inheritance, requires us to ensure that what we want to, quote, leave in our kids is served and not undermined by what we decide to leave to our kids. So Scott had us draw a line down the middle of a page and write all the things we wanted to leave to our kids, and then list the things we want to leave in our kids. Staring at these two lists, I saw so many ways to connect these I hadn't seen before. One idea he shared is grandparents giving each of their married kids a fully paid anniversary vacation week every year where they take their kids. Maybe we can do this 1 week per year with all of our adult kids and pull off the cousin camp idea. So when you start listing out all the things you want to leave in your kids, things that you want to transform their character, their lives, this could really, you start to wonder, okay, how might the things that I would lead to my kids actually help benefit those things? So that was the second takeaway. Number 3, save, spend, share jars. So for kids, like from the ages of 5 to 8, Scott recommended we get rolls of quarters and reinforce what we're training our kids in by leaving them quarters and letting them choose what jar they want to put their quarters in. And anytime they put something in the save jar, then it gets automatically matched to help them see how savings is designed to compound. And then Amazon has these save, spend, and share jars that you can buy. So I like that idea. It's kind of a riff on what we use with the marble system, but it added a little bit additional elements there with the different jars. Okay. Number 4, entitlement is created by solving your kids' problems for them. Once they learn their problems are the parent's job to solve, they become perpetual victims. And when your kids encounter problems you can't solve or that create, quote, trauma in their life, they're going to blame you. I thought this was a really helpful insight that we have to be really careful if we're constantly solving our kids' problems. This might result in what happens in a lot of families where kids blame their parents for everything that goes wrong in their life. And that pattern was really created by the constant solving of their problems in their childhood. All right, number 5, expectations, expenses, and extra pay. This is how you handle your own micro family economy. Okay, so he recommends you think about money from the perspective of these 3 things. And so number 1, expectations are things you do not get paid for because they're just expected elements of living in a house and carrying your weight, like making your bed or helping wash the dishes. So anything that you want to be clear, what are the expectations? So those are things that don't get paid. Number 2, expenses are things you expect your kids to pay for on their own, like gifts or anything they want to buy for themselves. And then extra pay are gigs that allow your kids to earn money. We're going to talk a little bit more on that later. But the takeaway is Scott pointed out that the reason many kids are not motivated to make money is they don't have enough expenses. Loading your kids up with expenses is key to creating intrinsic motivation to earn. Now, I've struggled with this. I like to provide for my kids, and so I've hesitated too often to let them struggle with expenses. That was a really interesting takeaway for me. It was like, okay, if you want your kids to actually become more entrepreneurial and begin to try to figure out how to earn money and be excited about the gigs, then they have to have enough expenses to motivate them to want to earn. So clarifying what those expenses are, I feel like that was a struggle for me. So that was helpful. All right. Now I want to talk a little bit about the extra pay gigs. This is my 6th takeaway, because he talked about brain gigs. So when we think of giving our kids tasks for extra pay, we think only of, quote, action gigs. And these are the things that they would do with their hands, like cleaning out the trash cans or mowing the lawn. But brain gigs are things like read this book, write me a report, have a 30-minute one-on-one with me about it, what you learned, and I'll give you $50. Now, I've started to assign my kids these in the last year, and I love this idea. I have not heard the language of brain gigs until Scott pointed this out, but I thought this was a really good idea that you can really help your kids understand things that are important, especially to the family, things that you want to really encourage them to learn, and connect those things with actual money-making opportunities. All right, number 7, starting a business for kids is simply creating value by doing an action gig for your family and then going out to friends and neighbors and offering to do that same gig for them, especially on a recurring basis. So whether it's the examples I gave, like washing out the trash cans or mowing the lawn, if you start to give your kids all these action gigs, then these are oftentimes problems that other families on the street or in your network are going to have as well. And so they can experience a real entrepreneurial opportunity by saying, hey, I'm going to blast out, an email, or I'm going to go door to door, or just talk to people in our network about, hey, I do this thing every month. I'll here's an action gig. So I think connecting those two things, giving your kids expenses, causing them to want to do action gigs, and then causing them to think about action gigs for other people in order for them to start to learn how to be an entrepreneur. I thought that was a really good, just really clear pathway. All right, number 8. Tell your kids anytime you make a donation or investment. Investing and giving is such a mystery to kids, so we need to process the story behind the donations and investments we're giving. And since they have a share and save jar, they might want to personally participate. So we've kind of done these in different seasons. We talk about donations or investing, but I think this is a really important concept I need to really be reminded of. Okay, number 9, ninth takeaway: when training kids on a household task, have them join you for the final 5 to 10 minutes. This is something that Lucas actually pointed out during his presentation. It's hard to involve kids in a task that you just want to get done. But what if instead of thinking of either doing the whole thing with your kid or doing the whole thing yourself, you engage the child in the last 5 to 10 minutes? So this was an idea that he started to implement with his kids. I thought it was an interesting idea. I'd never heard of before, just because it really does split the difference between those two impulses. I just want to get it done. And then saying, as soon as you start getting close to the end, you can kind of see the finish line in sight. Then you can start to train your kids in that. So that makes it a little bit more sustainable for somebody who's like, all right, I just need to get this thing done, but I don't want to completely leave my kids in the dust. And the last one: keep the paying work in the family. This is something that Blake pointed out in his presentation. Anything that you would pay someone outside the family to do should over time become a paid gig for one of your kids. If your kids won't do the gig for less money than you are paying others for, they probably need more expenses, see above. So that conversation around expenses. So yeah, so anything that you're paying, it's really important to be honest and upfront and talk about, okay, we're paying this person, whatever that might be, to do our landscaping or to cook for us, or if there's anything that you're paying that you're starting to really see other people do, childcare expenses, and you have older kids that could do that. Just having that conversation regularly and having that almost menu of opportunities for your kids to be able to take those things.
The Family Plan Calendar is the new way to keep your family team organized. Plan your rhythms, menu, household chores, and notes for the family all in one place. Visit familyteams.com to purchase.
All right, so that's my list. So I'm really curious for Elisa, maybe you could start, and then April, I'd love for you to chime in. I'm curious any one of these really sticks out to you in any way that you guys can think of that we might be able to implement this for our family.
Yeah, let's just try to remember the numbers. I think it was 4, 5, and 7. Can you remember what 4?
4 was the entitlement is created by solving your kids' problems for them.
Yes. Yeah. So that one really stuck out to me, I think, the most, because I think I've grown a lot by my parents kind of forcing me to do stuff that I was uncomfortable to do, like going and ordering my own something at a restaurant or making the phone call myself. And doing those kinds of things really, really helped, because now I'm not afraid to do them anymore. And I've grown in that confidence since I was a kid. I was really afraid to. And I think if my parent was just like, oh, I don't want to make them comfortable, or I don't want to, make them do something that they're afraid to do, when you really know your kid can do it. Like, it's not the end of the world if they mess up, or it's a really safe thing to do, especially if you're there, so that they can do it when you're not there. So doing things like ordering my mom's Starbucks for her. She'd be like, here's my order, now go order it. And I was like, that's only 2 out of 5 again. I did that, and then now I can do it for myself. And I got her lids at Chipotle. That was something when we're done with Chipotle, go get me a lid. And so I learned how to do that. And that was when I was really little. And it even helped with things like when we would go to Israel and I would go shopping by myself or with a sibling. I could do that because my parents had taught me how to do it. And I wasn't that afraid because I knew I could. And so giving your kids an opportunity to do that with you there is really the best time for them to learn that, I think. And that's something I definitely want to do in my family. And I wanted to talk about too was it 7?
Can I say something about that
Oh,
first?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like your kids have all different, as we know, like all different personalities and things like that. So they all have different levels of confidence or outgoingness or being able to like do something like what Elisa's saying. And so it can be really hard on a mama's heart sometimes to like challenge your kid in a way that you know is going to be hard for them. And so I think that it was almost like an act of my will to like make you go ask for the lid at Chipotle or something like, oh, I know this is going to make her so scared. And she was so cute and so little but she would do it anyway. And so just I want to encourage the moms out there that like when you see a kid maybe pulling back from something, knowing when to go ahead and encourage them and say, no, this is something you're going to do. I think this is good for you. You're going to overcome this thing, versus like an actual thing that they can't do. So capability is important there. Like I knew she could go up and ask for a lid at Chipotle, but I knew that it would, be hard for her to do that. So challenging them to do something they're capable of, but yet maybe like timid for some reason or holding back for some reason.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes, that stretching I think is so critical. And I think the thing that really surprised me a little bit is just the connecting that to the entitlement really being rooted in seeing that your problems all belong to somebody else, especially your parents. Like that's their job to solve everything instead of like, wow, this is a gift that you're giving me. The kind of gratitude is like such an opposite reaction from entitlement. And I think it starts by making sure that your kids are pushing past those sort of areas where they're uncomfortable in order to really feel like, no, I need to be able to do this for myself. That's huge. All right. And then you said the 7th one. Do you want me to read that one? It's starting a business for kids is simply creating value by doing an action gig for your family and then going to friends and neighbors and offering to do that same gig on a recurring basis.
Yeah, I think this coupled with the 6th one is really important. And another thing kind of with the capability, just like teaching your kids things that are something they're going to have to do in their everyday life when they grow up, plus teaching them the value of making money and how important it is to provide for others and to provide for yourself and for your family and in the future. Just by doing small things, like doing little chores that other people don't want to do, getting paid to do it from your family, which I think, like, again, like having the like resources in the family is really cool. And I think that's another thing that I've really come to appreciate is like I've only had one official job outside of the family, and every job that I've had inside the family has really, really prepared me for that because I think I am a timid person or a shy person, and like my family kind of, giving me jobs to in like a safe space with employers that love me and care about me really has helped me like learn how to do a job well. And then every employer I have is like they're such a great worker, and I'm always like, it's because of my parents. And so yeah, just getting that training and value in a safe place has really helped me in the real world. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to give your kid a job, even if it's like my dad had businesses, but if you don't have that, just giving them jobs to do around the house and teaching them new skills and then taking it out to the neighbors or people that would be willing to pay them so that they can use those skills and service in real life.
Yeah. Elisa's literally doing that with our neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a great connection, especially when you live in a great community and with awesome neighbors like we have. You have an opportunity to really begin to have that experience of it's working in the house, it's working on the street, and then you can start to see, oh no, I can see how I can create value in this larger world with the skills that God's given me. And one of the things I was thinking about when Scott was talking about this about you, Elisa, is he was very big into value creation, like, and obviously when it comes to like these action gigs where it's obvious what the value is, or you're helping with the laundry, or you're helping with the dishes, or you're helping with the childcare. And then there's the brain gigs, right, which is like, here's something that you can learn. But you have especially, I think, wanted to see how can I further my skills as an artist, and does that create value, or are there ways that I can attach artistic growth and opportunities in order to create value? And I can, sometimes for some people, they're like, oh no, this is just my hobby, I don't care about that, I just want to like make something, and that's the end of it. But you've always, since you were really young, I can remember when it first started, what was the first thing you tried to sell? I'm trying to remember how young you were. We started
Well,
trying to.
when we were in Israel, she would try to sell all her drawings to Steve and Taffy.
Yeah. What were you, like 5 or 6 or something?
Probably like, yeah.
Yeah, you'd put like you'd like put little dollar amounts on everything you were making, and you were trying to like
Bracelets. Yeah.
I
bracelets.
remember
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I really liked that the windows in the next door bedroom facing the porch opened. And so I would open them and I would draw pictures and I'd be like, this is 10 cents. This is
She would try to sell out the window.
out
use
through
the
my window and like get my family to come. And I'm like, if all my family comes, all the neighbors will start coming and I'll make so much money selling these.
Yes.
Drinks. Sell the drinks out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every window is just it's just like a shop, just like all it,
Every window has potential.
That's right.
So I'm curious now, I mean, you've thought about that and you've tried so many things over the years, and now you're, starting to make things on Instagram and sell, things on that you're crocheting and things. How have you thought about the tension between just wanting to be creative and make art, and then trying to actually see that actually turn into some kind of monetary value?
Yeah, so I think that coupling the desire to make art and the value of being financially stable, I think should be really like apparent in everyone's life and whatever they're interested in. And I think artists have a really hard time with this, where they're like, I just want to create, and then like everything else goes out the window, or they do like a job and then their creativity goes out the window, and that leads to a very like difficult life. I think both are very difficult. One seems to be more appealing and one seems to be less. But I think kind of finding different niches where it's like, okay, I enjoy food, or I enjoy makeup, or I enjoy painting. And then you take that and you take the most easy way to turn that into money. And so like what I'm trying to do, like with the least amount of like creative drain. So instead of like selling huge paintings, which would to me would be super draining, I sell stickers. So I just get on the iPad and I design something and then I sell it, and that gives some creative energy and adds monetary value. And learning things like how to design like logos and t-shirts, and you can sell your services that way. Just kind of finding ways that couple with like, I love to do this and that makes money, and I'm going to choose to do both of those things at the same time. Even if it's kind of far-fetched, but you enjoy it. Like I'm an artist, but I also enjoy cutting hair. So like maybe I'll learn how to do that for money. Or I love to cook and bake. And so maybe I'll learn to do that for money or something like that. So just kind of turning those skills that I've learned into like monetary value has really, really helped me, and it helped me keep my hope for the future. Because if I think I'm learning all these skills for what, and I'm not going to be able to do any of them when I get a job or when I become a mom, and instead turning all of that energy into like thoughts of the future and how I can like use those in any space that I'm in has really helped me.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I think that sometimes artists, they think about money as sort of dirty. It's sort of corrupting the purity of what they're trying to create, what their creative, outlet is trying to. And a lot of that I think is coming from some low views or maybe inaccurate views of what money is. Money is a store of value. One thing that Scott pointed out, that means it's like when somebody gives you money in exchange for your art, they're saying that is valuable. And so I think that making that clear connection, that I do love making art, but I also think that if you can make art in a way that is valued, is adding value to somebody else's life, then that is such a huge upgrade oftentimes to your what could be just a private hobby. And instead of seeing it as purely turning it into some transaction that is lowering its value, you're actually multiplying its value in some way. You've made it more valuable to somebody else. So I think that's I love watching you try to understand that. And I feel like you're just at the very beginning of you're exploring it in so many different creative ways. And I think just continue to pursue that. I think we live in such a good day and age for this, where you can learn so many skills on YouTube. You can turn around on, various platforms and really begin to sell and create a brand. And so there's just a lot of things you can do today that can help your art or your craft actually become valuable to others as well. Those are really good. April, how about you? On the list, what were some of the things that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think number one and possibly number two, can't remember, the idea of the story, like family lore.
Yes.
I think two of the things made me think of my dad. Well, the story one makes me think of my mom as well. I grew up on so many stories. Family lore was huge on both sides. And I didn't totally value it as a kid or a teenager or even a young adult. And, when we started having kids and started wanting them to value things, I realized, what I was doing to my parents by like not fully appreciating what they were trying to share or pass on. And so I tried to start telling my kids stories and realizing I couldn't recall it. Like as soon as my dad would start to tell me the same story I had already heard, I would know what he was going to say, but I couldn't like regurgitate it on my own. And so I started really trying to focus on like interrupting him and asking him questions if I, wanted clarification about a story. So it helped me like kind of be more invested in the family story that he was trying to share. And we made use of our Shabbat table for many years for the grandparent to be able to pass on stories about those that have gone before us. And I think that that's super valuable. And I know it's hard for the kids to maybe appreciate it because that's kind of where I was too. It's just kind of, but it's like swirling around them and it's like the air they breathe. And so I think hopefully there will come a time when they will also want to kind of memorize the details of the story.
Right.
I started like a little note on my phone with all the questions. Like I'll think of these random questions for my mom because I'm like, oh, how did that happen? Or what was she thinking when I thought about that from my grandparents' perspective, but I didn't think about it from my mom's perspective. What was she thinking when that happened? So I just, as the questions come up in my mind, I kind of make a note. And then whenever I'm with my mom, like asking her those things. So I agree. I think that family stories are a great way to pass on values
Yeah.
for the good or the bad.
Right. Well, I think the thing that I'm trying to process is some of my understanding of story is actually right now it's been in transition as I've spent the last couple of years, studying the Gospels every week, and then following Jesus Friday and just really believing that the Gospels are so unique. In other words, like it's important to understand the categories of stories that exist. And I realized that I was being kind of hyper Western in my view of stories, which is that there are stories that are, that are kind of like useless, like that didn't actually communicate anything very valuable. So we forget about it. We might tell it's like fun anecdote. Then there's like fun stories that get repeated and that are important in the sense that they are entertaining, but they don't actually communicate any particular major truth. But then there's this one kind of story where it sort of symbolizes the greater truths or greater values so well that it becomes the lore of the family, and that it becomes valuable to preserve if you're trying to create a kind of family culture. And when I read the Gospels, there's so many stories about Jesus. John even says at the end of his gospel, like, this is just the tiny tip of the iceberg. There's way more. But the question you have to ask is, how did those stories get in the Gospels, right? When Jesus, not just talking about the parables, but just the stories about Jesus, like with the healing of the paralytic, or, when they asked Jesus, who should we pay taxes to Caesar or not, or the woman caught in adultery or whatever. And each of those moments that would have potentially, you could have said, well, that's just a random event. And there were 100 things that happened today. But of the 100 things that happened today, that encapsulates something. And then the disciples who wrote down that story and retold that story did it because they understood that it uniquely symbolized something of transcendent truth. And it's hard for me because I think the Western mind's like, events are just historical and therefore they're all equal. And that's not true. There's sometimes where events transcend what is just normal, and they begin to express things that are really timeless and important. And so I haven't really, part of this is a mindset thing. And I was telling you, April, that when we do our Shabbat toast, when at everyone's birthday we like to tell stories, and I would say your mom, the symbolic stories that really demonstrate a value that she saw in one of our kids now that they're adults. She'll remember a story when they're 3 and they express that particular character quality in microcosm, right? And it's very, very innocent and early form. And then she'll tell the story and it's like, wow, that 3-year-old is now this 20-year-old. And like that connection is really amazing. But the story, it's the connection that this uniquely really describes their character. And I think that I'm really working through the mindset shift that would allow me to like see certain stories, certain family stories as, oh, that's something that needs to be retold. And like you said, the details start to matter. We want to preserve that somehow. So yeah, I don't know like how to do that exactly. That's kind of like the next step, I think, in the process that I'm describing. But yeah, do either of you have any more thoughts about like how we can do this better as a family?
I don't know. I mean, I really like when people share stories at the Shabbat table.
Like what you hear? Be sure to leave a rating and review for this podcast wherever you use streaming.
And I guess just being taught that it's something important, something to listen to. That like one thing has really helped me keep respect for like just elders in general. And like when I meet someone like an elder I'm not even related to, and like they try to tell me a story, like I really want to listen because I really value that they're probably telling me something that they learned and they want to pass it on. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think how to do it better. I think probably more documentation, whether that's like recording the grandparent telling the story, or if it's a story. I feel like there's so much about our family history just with you and I, Jeremy, about like how we met in the early years of our marriage and having kids that are really great stories that maybe should be written down or recorded somehow, whether it's, an audio recording or being written. I think that those things are good to capture because our memories fail us.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think Jeff Bethke at the Integrated before this one in Austin, he gave a talk about the father being the chief storyteller of the family, or taking this responsibility more seriously as fathers and mothers. And there's a book called, I think it's called Storyworthy, that he referenced. I've been listening to that. It's a guy who, there's a event, I think it's called The Moth, where you go and tell stories about your life, and it's like a competition. Anyway, he's won this event over and over again, and he basically unveils in the book how he basically designs a story, something that happens that might be very, very small. What's really remarkable about a lot of his stories are they're really tiny events, but he's able to tell them in such a way that they're very gripping and they're very relatable, and so people find themselves becoming almost vicariously entering into the experience in a powerful way. And so anyway, it's a great book. I've been really enjoying it. There's definitely a skill though that I realize, oh, that's something that you have to learn. Like your parents, they hone this skill by the constant telling and retelling and capturing these stories. One of the things that he recommends in that book is, and I've been working on this for like the last 3 or 4 years. I heard him on an interview he did on the art of manliness, and I was like really affected by it. He's like, every morning or every day, try to write down one sentence of a memorable moment or a story from yesterday, and just think about like one emotion or one thing that happened. And it's amazing to me. Sometimes I'll sit there and I'm like, nothing happened yesterday. And then I'll sit there and think, and about 20 seconds later, be like, oh my gosh, that's right. This big thing happened. Like I completely would have lost it. That could be a really interesting story, but it's something that was about to be thrown in the dustbin. I haven't really quite figured out how to take the next step and begin to catalog some of those things in a way that I can be retelling them. But yeah, I think that's a really helpful practice. So anything else
I
from the
think
list?
that
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think our we are so story formed just as humans on the planet, and allowing those teachable moments that come up, those we're surrounded by miraculous events, I feel like every day. And we just maybe there's something that happens often, so we kind of lose sight of the meaning. And so yeah, having some kind of practice like that where you're allowing that moment to like surface and then take it, deeper to a place where I think that's why Shabbat's so important, because we're supposed to remember. So there's this aspect of reflecting, having some time to look back and think about your week or things like that, letting stuff rise to the surface. So that's another thing, a tool that we could use to maybe hone in on some of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be great if there were more maybe story discovery happening at Shabbat. I think right now we look way deep into our past, but sometimes things are happening that month or that week even, where it's like, hey, like what are some things that have happened? So there might be some prompts where we might be able to discover some of these stories a little bit better. Therefore, then they get retold during different things. So awesome. Yeah. Any other from the list that stood out to you guys that would be interesting to process?
I don't think so.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we are heading out to get some serious Japanese food. You guys ready?
Yes. Yes.
It's been a long day, so we're excited to get out there. So thank you guys for listening, and thank you guys for doing this with me. And yeah, I'm excited to keep sharing with y'all takeaways from all these different events. But anybody listening to this that's interested in Integrated, by the way, this has been a huge life changer for me and for Jeff and for all the guys who are involved. So it's a mastermind that we do. We get together twice a year and we talk about the integration of faith, family, and business. And so you can go to familyteams.com and look at Integrated if you guys are interested in getting more details, or reach out to me. And so I love to meet new guys who are working through how to integrate those things. And man, we have some amazing opportunities together to like go into topics like these. And you guys saw those 10 takeaways, but that's what every meetup is like. And April and Elisa were actually at the meetup in Colorado with lots of the moms and kids. I think we had 30 families at the Colorado Springs event. So part of this is not just the dads getting together, but a lot of these meetups, we bring families together as well. We're experimenting even more with couples and other family things that we're going to be doing this year. So yeah, come reach out to me if you're interested and have questions about that. I'd love to see more guys jump in and get to experience that. So thank you all for listening, and I'll see y'all next time.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Jeremy Pryor's podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any future content. Follow Jeremy on Twitter and Instagram, as well as his Substack blog, all linked in the description. See you next time.